Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to HMP. I hope you've stayed off the moors, but on the podcast because the spooky season in Once Bitten is underway, and today we are covering An American Werewolf in London from 1981. I'm Adam Portress, and I'm joined today by a rotting corpse in the back of a movie theater that he calls an art house, Sweet Sean's and Kovacs from the internet.
Adam, I am so mad at you right now for playing the theme song to our movie that we've been working on, Werewolf in Wisconsin.
Oh, darn it. And he's been stalking the tube looking for yet another victim, Bruce Leslie.
I'm a prickly pear, and guys, I learned martial arts from an app.
Oh, my word. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you have got the new app, because for the Patreon, have you seen this? Patreon's got a new app out and everything. They've redesigned everything.
Update my very, very neglected Patreon. Thank you for mentioning that.
Now, the cool part about that is, with the Patreon, patreon.com/HMP, we're getting into it right off the bat here, is they got a chat feature and stuff now. So now we have like a literal active chat room and stuff for all the Patreon people and stuff. So we can talk back and forth and all that kind of good stuff. And there's
That's
other
awesome.
Neat things in there.
That's awesome.
Can I take a minute to plug my Patreon?
Please do.
So, I'm down to 8 patrons because I quit producing anime content and took a little break. But I am putting like behind the scenes clips. I'm putting like in progress footage up of this fun little werewolf project I'm working on with my friends and family here around town. And if you want to see those, it's $5 a month. You can go over there and check it out. It's the Bruce Leslie Patreon, Bruce Leslie Anime Dad Patreon.
And that's kind of how this whole thing started off here is Bruce has been down the Lycanthrope Alley. Doesn't that sound like also a bar?
Well, Adam, is this a good time to mention like how at one point before I just kind of got like a little exhausted. I didn't have enough time to do everything, but I had talked to you about a 13 episode YouTube series.
Yes.
About werewolves. And I took like the keys from what we had talked about programming for that. And that's what I've worked into here. And this is my little substitute for that werewolf video series that I honestly just did not have the time and energy to produce.
Well, you also
awesome. I would have been terrible.
How many did we originally talk about? Like 10 or something? It was a lot.
13. It was 13.
Lord of mercy. It was
because we're gonna do one a week till Halloween.
We had some lofty goals, didn't we? For like half a second, it was just like, oh my Lord, that's actually
it was my idea and my idea to kill it. So all the blame goes here.
Hey, listen, but as long as it doesn't come back to life and start haunting you in the middle of the night, I think we'll be A-okay, because that happened to somebody on today's movie. But before we
next year.
Before we get into all that, again, be like the supporters that can talk in the chat room and all kinds of stuff now at patreon.com/HMP, pre-show, post-show, Dinger Zone. And again, we just want to thank all you guys because we talked a lot. We didn't record a lot for the pre and post show because there's a lot of stuff going on. But we just want to let you guys know that we appreciate all of you guys listening every single week. All the reviews and stuff that we've gotten on the iTunes. Every single bit of it matters. Every bit of whether it's $1 all the way on up, or if it's just telling somebody that you know about this show that would like it. That's all it takes. That's all it takes. Just let somebody know about the show. Share it. Support us on Patreon. Whatever you want to do. But just pretend that we might disappear if you don't. That would really help us all out. And again, patreon.com/HMP. So, Bruce, American Werewolf in London is number 2. Now, you chose this one post The Howling, right?
Well, I went a little bit chronologically with these two, not chronologically with release date because I really don't know the release dates, but chronologically with when the projects began, pre-production basically, because the famous story we talked about Rick Baker last week, going from the other movie to this movie. So the reason I picked this number 2, a little bit of it is chronologically, but we have issues that we'll talk about why are werewolves comedies? How are we going to redefine this genre? Because we have 2 movies in 2 weeks that are trying to redefine it in different ways. And then we're going to move on to something that deals with it a different way next week. But I think this is probably the best name recognition of any werewolf movie in our generation, or at least in mine and Sean's.
Yeah,
it's just such an amazing name. It's such an amazing title.
And the title is also amazing because it's not a perfect title, but it's a perfect title to get you to buy a ticket. And I really look forward to talking about this one.
Sean, when was your first viewing of this movie?
All of this stuff all comes up at the same time, right? So like I go through once I'm not a sucky baby anymore towards watching movies, like being a scared of movies, it all happens all at the same time. So within like a 3-year period, I see every horror movie I can see, and it's like from 20 to 23. I'm not watching any TV, I'm not doing anything else, I'm just watching movies. And I watched a ton of horror movies because I'd gone my whole life without watching.
First horror movie I saw in the movie theater was Friday the 13th part 8, and I was like, I've been scared of that crap. So I started watching a lot of stuff, and I realized, oh, it does get better. That wasn't the peak, because I went in believing the marketing that it was the peak of horror.
Yeah.
After seeing those episodes of the X-Files where the black ooze is going into people's bodies and like going through their veins and stuff, and it's just so scary at the time.
Oh yeah,
and
anything that was in like that host episode, like that, that's scarier than anything. You've seen at that time.
It's so much more frightening to me than anything that Jason can possibly do.
Oh yeah, there's this worm man underneath the ground and everything, and he leeches off of people. Like no, I don't want anything to do with this.
It's just the worst, man.
So good. Though.
It's great, but it's
because it's the worst.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't think I saw this. I think I mentioned it on the show previous. I didn't watch this until I was about 20. I'd moved to Florida for school and everything, and I didn't really know anybody, but I knew my dad's friend from growing up, and like I'd met him before and stuff, and met his family and all that kind of stuff. And he was like, "Hey, since it's your first week or whatever out here, come on down to the house and stuff. We'll have dinner." And then we ended up watching American Werewolf in London because I was like, I've never seen that." He's like, "Oh, well, we got to watch this." And it was one of those you're like, "Why did I wait this long to see this?" What an idiot I was for those times. But let's get into it. Here's the IMDb plotline for An American Werewolf in London. As we know, IMDb always 100% correct in everything they say and or do. 2 American college students on a walking tour of Britain are attacked by a werewolf that none of the locals will admit exists. I guess that's not too bad.
That's pretty good.
IMDb.
That's pretty good.
That's actually really good for IMDb.
For them, yeah it's like at least they got the country of origin right for all that stuff. So that's good. This is written and directed by John Landis. Bruce, again, let me smash into this because I don't have a super long list here, but let me sell everybody on this sucker because it's got everything. We got the Bert and Ernie of horror, and they're traveling abroad. We got the Moors, you better stay off them. A welcoming English pub, a tale of woe, a gruesome attack, 80s hospitals, always looking cheap as hell. Don't know why. We got bad dreams, waking nightmares that urge. We got a full moon and a werewolf transformation in stark flat light. You'll understand why they got the Oscar. You'll go on a bit of a spree, scare a few folks, eat a few more. A werewolf movie. It's a werewolf movie, you know? Oh, and there's also a machine gun wielding zombie SS guard thrown in there as well. This movie's got everything.
Definitely. It is stuff that you didn't know you wanted because you didn't want it.
So let's get into it. Bruce, what do you got for us?
All right, man. So I have stuff to say in the opening credits because the thing that gets me right off the bat is it's easy now to forget that werewolves were a fallow topic for almost 30 years, 20 plus years.
Mm-hmm.
Because when they start, as soon as the movie starts, the very first thing you see is a black screen with white block letters that say Lycanthrope Films Limited Production, which leads you to believe that there's a company that does nothing but make werewolf movies you've never heard of, haven't seen, and can't find. You know what I mean?
I go into their back catalog.
I never thought about that. So the LLC would throw you off if you're just watching it as somebody who is just watching a movie.
This is clearly a studio production, so they've made it up just like a gimmick.
It's it's an LLC. It's the thing where, like, if something should happen.
Yes, it's that specific movie, but it's it's got that name. It's just got that Lycanthrope Films. You don't see Zombie Pictures Limited on a zombie film very often. That just tells you how cutting edge this was, believe it or not. And for some reason, I'm taken by the fact that it opens with Man City Football Club's theme song, which of course is Blue Moon.
I did not know that.
Yeah, a very American song to be playing in England. I don't know where Manchester's at. I don't know how far north it is, but
speaking of that, though, Bruce, you'll appreciate this. You know what? I've been seeing videos of them singing over in Germany during Oktoberfest.
I sure hope it's that 500 Miles song by the Proclaimers.
No, I wish it would be. They're singing John Denver.
Oh, they're singing Country Roads?
They're singing Country Roads. Like,
oh, wow.
They're literally saying West Virginia every time. It's so weird. But it is a thing there that, like, in giant beer halls and everything, everybody's singing Take Me Home.
That has been a phenomenon for a long time, and that is what is referenced in Kingsman 2 when Mark Strong faces his death, and it's time to face death, and he can do anything on earth he wants as he faces it bravely, and he sings Country Roads. Because in Europe, that is the go-to karaoke song for some reason.
So strange. Europeans, hearmoviepodcast@gmail.com. What up?
And famously, the European singers, whenever it gets to the point that says West Virginia, they always say it, West Virginia. Like they really lean into West Virginia for some reason in Europe.
Strange.
But I also...
Because of our beloved Queen.
Yes. Queen Dolly Parton. Oh, yeah. If they made her queen, I would not oppose.
I don't think many people would.
Yeah, I'm not totally for monarchies, but that I'd be okay with.
Yeah.
What do we got to do to replace both political parties with Dolly Parton?
With Dolly Parton, yeah.
The problem is once Dolly Parton's no longer there, you're going to have all these fakers who think that they are like Dolly Parton, and they're just not.
I'll tell you what, I ain't voting for Loretta Lynn's niece. I mean, what the heck?
No.
We do get what
Shania Twain's Canadian. No, thank you.
I do get what I do consider some really great shots of the Misty Moors, because as a horror fan going all the way back to something which gets referenced here, The Hound of the Baskervilles by Arthur Conan Doyle. You know, I'm on the record as being a massive Sherlock Holmes fan, and that's the one Sherlock Holmes horror story. Well, these Misty Moors, I could just probably watch like one of those things where they play music for 45 minutes and you look at these shots of the Misty Moors. Like I could sit through there.
You just got to get that Apple TV and wait till that screensaver come on.
I know. Well, I got shocked out of it because I'm enjoying these Misty Moors and I'm liking Blue Moon.
Look at this guy over here.
And then all of a sudden I see a name in the opening credits that just, it's like pouring ice water over my head while I'm trying to take a nap. John Peters produced this.
Yeah, I saw that too. I had never caught that before.
Nary a giant spider in this whole thing.
Yeah, it's before he had the juice.
But everyone's hair is fantastic.
That's true.
How much you want to bet he betted that nurse lady? I would put good money on it.
I would too.
I feel like he betted the nurse lady who wasn't as pretty, because I feel like he's the one who preys on insecurities.
Man, John Peters has all the cocaine, and keep in mind it's 1981 and he has all the cocaine. Like
cocaine is legal and AIDS doesn't exist at this point. It's fine.
I'm just saying the traditionally less attractive nurse had a better haircut, and John Peters knows his way around a haircut.
The gals on stage that have good hair, that's the one you know John Peters is at.
And honestly, I can't think of a better way to introduce a couple of numb knucklehead skull characters than to just show them arriving on the middle of the screen in the center of a truck filled with sheep.
Yes, it's not very subtle. It is not a very subtle opener for these two characters.
And it's almost as if John Landis is wanting us to think of a wolf in sheep's clothing here, isn't it?
No, it's not.
Oh, it's not?
No, man. It is
the sheep going to the slaughter.
These are all sheep going to be slaughtered. Yes.
Oh. Man, I thought it was wolf in sheep's clothing.
And then we go to the slaughtered lamb. It's like, hello, bang.
Yeah. I mean, it is so not subtle. It's like, you guys see what I'm doing? It's like Landis almost like poking his head up.
All right,
the bottom of the camera frame.
I think here's where we have our obligatory conversation about John Landis.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So.
Unproblematic. Agreed.
Yeah, exactly. No blemishes, nothing to look at, nothing that you can point at that goes like, maybe not so great.
I have
Perfect.
an obvious hang up with John Landis, which I think prevents me from admitting some really good things about this movie. But this movie is not perfect.
No.
And for some reason, I'll be pointing out the imperfections more than what's right. But also, I will be visiting this again as we talk about it. But if someone wants to make a werewolf movie, you have to watch this.
Yes.
Like hands down, you have to watch this. And it's not just because of Rick Baker. I mean, the storytelling, as much as I don't like John Landis, and a lot of why I don't like John Landis is you watch this and it feels tropey as heck because this is where the tropes came from.
Yes.
Well,
But of
also at the
course,
same time,
it
too,
has boobies in it, so I couldn't see it till I'd seen the other stuff.
But at the same time, too, if you look at a lot of Landis's stuff, a lot of his things go kind of tropey and things like that. If you look back at like your schlock, your Kentucky Fried Movies sort of stuff, all these kinds of things.
So I want to talk more about John Landis. I've seen this movie. I've seen Kentucky Fried Movie, and I've seen the Thriller music video.
Mhm.
I've also seen Twilight Zone, the movie. Have
You
I
got-
seen anything else by John Landis, do you think?
Did you ever go on Captain EO?
Never.
Okay, then maybe not. That's the only thing I could think of.
Yeah. Let me.
Okay, so I don't have a big blind
No,
spot. then. I know the
honestly,
guy's work.
these were his big
career
works.
probably came to an abrupt end for obvious reasons, right?
Well, your Blues Brothers, you
Yes.
know that, of course.
Yes.
You know your Blues Brothers, so that's
He did
that's
Property
enough.
Brothers?
Blues,
Brothers.
I think our internet's starting
Blues
to crap
Brothers
out.
actually very, very solid. Sorry.
No, but he did a whole bunch of little stuff.
Yeah.
Things
I mean,
that you didn't
after.
see.
Yeah, and after what happened on Twilight Zone, it was probably correct for him to step back. Not probably. It was absolutely what needed to happen. I'm surprised that's all that happened.
And for better or worse, he was in a position he could afford to step back.
Yes, exactly. So there's like he becomes an executive producer on a lot of stuff, which is take that as you will.
Yeah.
Oh boy, we sure are punishing him. He just makes all the money off of this stuff. Now.
Yeah, while the other people do all this stuff. So yeah, sure.
Yeah, that's a
And
little rough.
my hangups with John Landis in a totally unfair move, they expand to Max Landis too. So
He's got his own issues.
Also completely unscathed.
It's almost as if growing up completely wealthy from a father who got away with something heinous makes you think you too can get away with something heinous if you would like. But keep off the moors. One of the lines that are so iconic, so classic when you're talking about werewolves.
Holy
you say keep off the moors, people know you're talking about werewolves.
Or specifically this werewolf movie, I think.
Well, what I wanted to ask, I know it from this werewolf movie, but this werewolf movie is so referential. I wonder if Keep Off the Moors was in that Lon Chaney movie. So I'm going to have to go back and watch that sometime.
I think it is. I think you're right. I think it is.
Because it's just
I think
so iconic. I think it has to be referential here. But there are a lot of things here that are referential of older stuff that I'm going to talk to you more specifically about, Sean, because you're the same age as me. But our generation knows werewolves through this, even though this wasn't the first werewolf movie of our generation. The Howling was. This was the bigger budget with bigger PR and the bigger hit.
If I can go backwards just for 1 second, you're gonna know a ton of John Landis stuff. It's just the stuff that's like blind to somebody that's Adam's age, because like who cares? But like he directed Three Amigos. He had directed
Three Amigos is a golden classic for people our age, Sean.
Right. Spies Like Us, like that's him also.
Another golden classic, yeah.
Yes.
And then there's got into those did
Saturday
he
Night
do Vacation? He wrote Vacation?
No. That's what's his nut? Hughes.
Oh, Hughes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Hughes.
I'm sorry. I got Landis and Hughes confused very briefly because we're talking about Spies Like Us.
And then there's the big one that everyone knows, which is Coming to America, is another Landis movie.
And to be honest, I think the smart thing he did was switching genres.
Yeah.
I'm also kind of impressed with how successful he was with comedies, because The reason I've always had negative things to say about this is he tried to make it a comedy, and for me, the horror elements work, the comedy elements don't. But comedy's also one of the most subjective art forms on earth.
Well, he also doesn't. He like what looking at that interview from 25 years ago with him. What he believes is that he made a horror movie that has funny elements,
which is how you should do
accurate.
It. Yeah.
Which is accurate, but everywhere you see this listed, particularly because the time it was made, has it listed as a comedy or a comedic horror, comedy, horror comedy. But if it's going to be listed as just one thing, it's a comedy. And I think that's a marketing move because that was so financially successful for Sam Raimi's Evil Dead movies. And I think that's part of why they leaned into the comedy part, because in my personal opinion, the pinnacle of horror comedies, the Evil Dead series. Yeah. I mean, you can't, in my opinion.
Just to knit a little, pick a little nick here.
And you definitely know more than I do, Adam. So I won't argue.
Because I wouldn't say that we really got funny Evil Dead until Evil Dead 2. There's a couple of things in the first Evil Dead, but I wouldn't say you got straight out comedy until Evil Dead 2.
You nailed it. Evil Dead 2 is where it shines. Yes, you nailed it.
Yeah.
So again, more things pulling from this.
but you can tell that these two guys walking on the moors here in this mist, you can tell that these are children of privilege, because they say something about having 3 months to spend in England. And no offense to Marty and Rob, because they're dear friends, but you must have already done nearly everything else on Earth if you plan to spend 3 months in Northern England. Because I got to tell you, man, you're awful close to Scotland. And like I said, no offense, but Scotland's a wee bit better for these lads.
Well, at least they were like, we've got a couple of places and stuff that we can pop all around to and everything. But like I've strangely known people like this who do not come from money, but like there are just weird people that will just go. Like, I went to India for like a month, and you're like, how?
This isn't India. That's the thing. It's comfortable,
right? But that's what I'm trying to get to. The point is that like there is a level of middle class in America that is like that existed, it seems like, only in the 80s, where like some of the kids that I went to high school with could totally have done this, but they were still just middle class.
Yeah.
I could not. Yeah. Like there's a middle class line within being called middle class, where like, oh, you know what? I've just graduated high school. I'm going to take a year off and travel the world.
And for the record, I entered preschool. It wasn't called preschool. Back then it was called Head Start. I entered Head Start before I was 5 years old. Since that point, I have never had 3 months where I'm not either working or going to school, and neither have either of you. I mean, humans don't do that now. And that's what I'm saying. And it's kind of like saying I got 3 months to waste in rural Arkansas. Like how little do you have that matters if you can spend 3 months just hanging out in rural Arkansas? Because they're in the rural Arkansas of the UK. I got to tell you that.
Pretty sweet.
And also, guys, I'm well known for having comedy that's not sophisticated. But you got to give me credit that I don't resort to knock jokes, because the first jokes of the movie are some really poorly delivered knock jokes as they're walking around a hillside.
Man, you are not wrong.
I think the point is that they're bad, though. I don't know that I don't think John Landis goes, I wrote a real corker here.
I think that I really think this. I think that he wanted to get camaraderie out of his two actors. And the way he did that was start telling jokes to each other.
Just something stupid and corny, and that's probably something Griffin Dunn came up with.
Once again, I admit that I have a chip on my shoulder against John Landis, but I think of him as a person who's successful in comedy by accident.
Yeah, I
don't think he gets it. I think he just gets out of its way.
I don't think so, man. I think that you have to have the shots correct. I mean,
here's what I'm going to say. No, I am going to sing so much technical praise on John Landis.
Yeah.
So once the praise starts, I don't pull it back, but I don't want people coming at me for not mentioning the negatives. So I'm getting those out of the way, because we're about to get into Bruce has to swallow his pride and say nothing but incredibly good things about the technical skill of somebody he doesn't really like.
He's when he's firing on all cylinders, I'll say this. When he's firing on all cylinders, he is a terrific director. Some of my favorite comedies of all time were shot by this guy. There are moments where it's like I don't know what made him know if you shoot it from this angle, that joke's going to come across better, or like you're conveying information through a shot selection, but he has that. And it's pretty incredible to see, especially in a movie like this, where I'm not blinded by, oh my God, it's Eddie Murphy, literally at the height of his Eddie Murphy-ness. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like so, he's just really smart with his shot selection.
You guys know how like tier lists work?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And like the S tier is that top list, and that's like the people that are beyond being graded, kind of our Carrie Kelly.
Yeah.
When we're doing our Robin rating.
Is that what you think Carrie Kelly is?
Yeah.
Because you've been doing the system wrong if that's what you think Carrie Kelly is. Carrie Kelly is a middle of the road that you admit somebody likes, but you may not necessarily like it. That's a Carrie Kelly.
I'm not going to do this too much, but I kind of think I might have invented the Robin rating scale, so you might have misunderstood from the beginning. Anyway, let's go on back.
You didn't, but okay. Thankfully, we did it on the air, so we could all listen to it, and we can all find out who did it.
Me or those lying recordings.
Me or that friggin' internet.
I am quite certain. I'm quite certain.
Wait! I just found the episode. I'm going to play it right now, guys. Listen. That's not what happened. Oh, did you just hear that?
That's pretty good.
Wow, I don't know how you
I couldn't even remember what we were arguing about, so I couldn't even fake it. That's how bad I am. Anyway, I guess I'm wrong because I don't remember. Oh, Robin rating. Let me replay it. Guys, I've got an idea. We'll call it the Robin rating scale. There you go. Photographic.
Wow. Well, there you go.
If you listen back to the quality of those first couple episodes, you'll hear real well how that sounded exactly like it sounded 8 years ago.
No, let me,
like a
Sean, tell me if this is closer to how it sounded 8 years ago. And now we'll talk about the Robin rating scale.
No, as a matter of fact, no, you didn't do that voice by the time we were doing H&P.
Yeah, I think I'd smacked it out of you at that point. I don't know how I did it,
now, here's what we really have to talk about, guys. We really need to talk about this charming little place called the Slaughtered Lamb.
I love this place. This is just pure design and casting gold.
Oh my Lord, man. Perfect.
So I went to college on a scholarship, and part of my scholarship involved the potential option, which I didn't exercise, but at the time I thought I would, to go study at Oxford. And during the interview, when they talked about what I wanted to do in Oxford, I told them I wanted to find a pub like the Slaughtered Lamb and just hang out. And that impressed them, but I don't think they knew what I meant. But I got the scholarship and didn't go to England.
They were like,
I'd like to join the crewing team, please.
But this pub for me is probably the showcase location for this movie. As far as locations go, this is the one that stuck with me. And if I think of this movie, like it's one of those things where in my mind, this movie is 50% in this pub and the other 50% in the hospital. And I forget all the rest.
Comprised of maybe 15 minutes combined for the movie.
And I think part of the reason I've never had a good feeling about the comedy in this movie is they follow up the knock knock joke with this whole complicated pentagram leads to a Texas joke. And then we get the remember the Alamo joke that, as far as I know, historically, this might have been the first time it was ever told. But by the time I had seen this movie, I had heard the remember the Alamo joke told about 27,000 different ways.
I think you're right. I think that's an old, an oldie but a goodie, or maybe it's not even a goodie. Maybe it's just an oldie.
I think it's just an oldie.
Yeah, actually, Ben, what is a goodie? Anyway, it's an oldie, but
and them Chuck Berry songs.
Yeah,
those are old but good.
My Dingling.
Listen,
that is a pretty great song.
Listen, I love
Swimming
that
across
song.
Turtle Creek, snapper snapping all around my feet. All right,
for those of you that will not sing.
When I was a little bitty boy.
My grandma gave me my favorite toy. Okay, so they do name drop Universal Studios here, which if I could only have one cinematic universe, like seriously, I'm not lying. If I was the whole me and Wilson and Tom Hanks are stuck on an island and Tom Hanks dies, what am I going to do for the rest of the time? I would want to watch the really old Universal monster movies because they just influenced so much that came after that. I think it's the thing where every frame has been studied as if it were a portrait.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just kind of fun to like watch and you get to see history the same way. I mean, it's a more modern medium, so maybe it doesn't have the same generational feeling, but I've been to the Louvre and I've seen the Mona Lisa, and you look at that and I have no idea if the Mona Lisa is any better or worse than an Alex Ross painting. Okay,
there's no boobs in there.
Did you?
Yeah, but when I look at it, I think of I'm not using hyperbole when I say millions of people have stood in that spot and looked at that painting, and you have this weird communal joy that you think, what other than a painting or a statue could cause this kind of thing, you know? So you get washed over with that. And that's the same thing I get when I watch Universal movie monsters or the Universal monster movies.
What about you, Adam? If you have one, how did you put it, Bruce? One universe?
I said one cinematic universe for lack of a more appropriate term, probably.
What are you choosing, Adam?
Gosh. Okay.
Because I literally have no idea what your answer is.
I think Adam chooses Back to the Future. The 3 Back to the Future movies will suit him well.
Yeah, like honestly, because Back to the Future itself is my like desert island movie. Like, if you give me like one singular film that that's under your 2-hour mark or whatever that you watch, that would be it for me because it has a little bit of everything. So yeah, I'll go with that I think it's a solid answer. You got action, you got adventure, you got a little love story, you got some sci-fi stuff in there. Like, you got like a Western in the third one. You got all the elements, so you got a lot of variation. The future, the past, the very, very past. So yeah, that'll keep me entertained.
Good choice.
From the time I was, a little kid watching colorized movies on TBS, the colorized versions of black and white classic movies.
The way they should be.
Of course, when Frank Sinatra was colorized with brown eyes, of course. But anyway, when I would be watching those, just those classic movies, I would have the thoughts like the 2 most iconic classic movie scenes in my mind of all time are Rhett Butler saying, "Frankly, my dear Scarlett, I don't give a damn," and Dr. Frankenstein screaming, "It's alive." And I recently went back and watched that clip, and we used to do the HMP awards where we give the honorary Bruce Hammy acting award or whatever. If there's a Hall of Fame, you are the Babe Ruth of hammy acting, it is gonna be Dr. Frankenstein's "It's Alive" scene.
Oh, I don't know.
That is my favorite scene. I love that scene.
I don't know if I go so far to call that ham, though.
It might just be enthusiastic.
Yeah, that's just good. I don't think that's ham. I think that's pure cut steak.
So like if I'm sitting down making a YouTube video about an action figure and I'm asking one of my kids, "Hey, what do you think about the articulation on this elbow?" I want them to answer me with the "It's Alive" enthusiasm. Like everything I do, famously George Lucas, when he was directing Star Wars, said faster and more intense. That was the only 2 words of direction he gave everybody.
Yeah.
Well, mine is louder and more gesticulation. That's my direction because I love "It's Alive."
Shake across the screen, will you?
It's my dream scene. I wish I could go back in time and just like be a guy sweeping the floor while that's going on. I'd love to be on a movie set ever in my life, but if I could be on a set where something like that was going on and you see history in the making, that's like being in the stands when Lou Gehrig plays that whatever game it was that broke the record. He says, "I'm the luckiest man on earth," while he's dying from a horrible disease.
What'd they call that disease again?
I think it was called Babe Ruth's disease. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me look it up, Adam. I've got a medical
makes you eat hot dogs uncontrollably.
I've got a medical journal, and I'm looking under A, B, C, D's nuts, Adam. boy, I've lost track. Okay. So I do love how he tells his Alamo joke. The whole place is raucous. And we have what I called Bruce tries to be less of an introvert and more of an extrovert and make a comment to the conversation.
The real subtle.
And the raucous laughter just stops. I love him when everybody's laughing, everybody's having fun. Like, you're one of us. We're all here. It's okay to say things. What's that on the wall? Leave and die.
Listen, there's no better way to turn everything on a dime and then just have everybody just go like, well, that's it. You're all dead now. Sorry.
I also love how I'm trying to use my wireless mouse to turn the pages on my legal pad. I really need to figure my brain out. I do like how they tell him, get out of here because you dared to ask an innocent question about something we proudly have displayed on our wall. This is like if you go into Applebee's and they have the picture from when the high school won the state championship in 1989, which is the last time Applebee's had fresh items on their menu.
Take that,
and
Applebee's.
You say, hey, what's this? And everybody kicks you out and then causes you to be murdered by a beast. That's what happens here. Like, if you don't want people asking about the pentagram on the wall, guess what? Put a picture over it. You don't even have to paint over it. You put up a poster of Marilyn Monroe.
It'd be great. Right? You go into a TGI Fridays and you're like, what's the deal with that ice skate on the wall? And they're like, get the hell out of here.
No, they say get out of here. And as you leave, a violent murderer kills you, because that's what happens here.
You get murdered by Tanya Harding.
Like the barmaid says, if they leave, they'll be violently murdered. And they say they got it coming to them for asking an innocent question.
They came out here. How dare they?
I don't know if English people are like this, but if they are, they absolutely rock. And I want to live in England because I hate humanity.
They got a general disdain, I think.
But after they leave the pub, we get my autocorrect doesn't even work when I'm writing by hand, because I put after they leave the hub, and they're not in a hub, they're in a pub. But we get this blue moon establishing shot, which is so iconic that I would have thought they ripped this off from a Saturday Night Live skit and put it in here. You know what I mean? Like, if you're doing a Saturday Night Live skit with a werewolf, you show the blue moon with the clouds going in it. And I had a moon scene in this little stupid video that I'm making. And I intentionally picked a blood moon that was red because I did not want to get a copyright strike because people thought I ripped off the moon from this movie. That's how iconic the blue moon is here, with, the blue moon song being kind of the theme song of the movie.
More or less, I would say.
There is a Saturday Night Live sketch where there's a werewolf transformation. Only the actor keeps having to put the prosthetics on himself.
I love it.
I want to say, I think it's even Michael J. Fox who does it. And he's like, oh my God, I'm changing. And then they cut back to the other actress, like in the set, in the sketch. And then it comes back to Michael J. Fox and he's got a little bit more hair on. It's pretty amazing. I might be remembering the wrong actor, but that's definitely the bit of the sketch.
Now there's this shade of blue that's going on after we see the blue moon. The boys, I'm going to call them boys. They're in their 20s, but to me, they're boys. But they're walking down the little abandoned road. We've got this blue shade over this color coding, this color correction. And I realized today, like, I've seen this movie not all that long ago, but I realized today that I'm watching it, that I'm actually trying to copy this color correction in my werewolf movie, because to me, that is what werewolf movies are supposed to be, instead of your typical brown kind of color correction that you get with most features. And I didn't even know that I'm ripping off John Landis when I felt like my werewolf movie has to have all this blue tint on it. And then I'm watching this, I'm like, oh my goodness, this movie that I kind of like to make a point of saying is not the greatest werewolf movie, like people say, is probably the only movie I'm ripping off when I make my silly video.
It's tough to do something that is as iconic as this, because then that becomes the norm.
And I do have some comments about that later in my notes. But seriously, it seems like all it takes is just a little bit of rain, and these two nutsacks do the exact opposite of keeping off the moors. And I like it because it starts raining, They go off the road, go onto the moor, but I can't see that there's any less rain involved in the path they're choosing. Now, I imagine they're cutting corners. You know what I mean? Like you're cutting corners because you follow the road. It takes this big curve and then switches back. So you're cutting across the moor to get there.
And they're also pissed off at all the people who just kicked them out of the bar, who kept telling them stay off the moors. They're like, oh, really? Well, then I'm definitely going over the moors now.
Well, the thing is, there's a point where one of the guys realizes they're off the moors and he kind of acts worried.
Yeah.
So it's almost like that a temporary lapse in judgment before they kept off the moors or failed to keep off the moors. But you guys may be surprised, but once they go on to the moors, we're 16 minutes in. I paused it and checks the time. We're 16 minutes in and we get the inciting wolf attacks. And I got to say that this too influenced me very much. And I didn't realize it. But the scene with the wolf attack doesn't actually have a whole lot of like biting and scratching. This is a really budget conscious but well shot scene that between, I imagine, Landis shot the scene and Rick Baker making the most out of a little bit of blood. But you have a guy laying on the ground and screaming while there's some blood thrown here and there, but there's not actually that much gore until after the fact. And then I go back and I kind of watch the 2 kill scenes that I've tried to shoot. And once again, this movie that I claim is not as good as Wolfen, I'm kind of trying my best to do this.
Well,
I didn't even know this is what I'm doing.
Well, I mean, I'm going to guess this. This is just a guess here.
Yeah.
That when we watch Wolfen next week, because when's the last time you watched that movie?
I was about 12.
So I think you're going to watch Wolfen. I think you're going to watch Wolfen and you're going to be like, oh, I was mistaken.
What a dumb child I was.
Well, because this movie is just so well made. I mean, it's the reason why both Adam and myself were like, no, you're wrong. No.
This movie is a technical accomplishment.
Yes.
But we'll get more into what I enjoy.
Right.
So it's like one of those things where I totally know that what I should do and what I want to do aren't the same thing.
Right.
This movie is an example of what I should do, whereas other movies are what I want to do. You
know
what I mean?
Han Solo?
I do. So Adam, that dude who is in the pub, the one who warns them, outside.
Yeah, the old guy.
Is that the same dude from Pirates of the Caribbean and Gladiator? That's the same guy, right?
I don't think so.
He's just like 30 years younger.
I don't even know the guy.
I don't know off the top of my head. I'm going to be completely honest. I'd be flat-footed.
Well, I'm sitting here, and about the time of that inciting wolf attack at 16 minutes, I'm a person who's cursed with a little bit of geography knowledge. And I'm thinking, like, where they're at is not where London is at. But London is in the title of this movie.
Damn my geographical knowledge.
He regains his consciousness. And once again, the distance involved is much different because America is like its citizens. It's bloated and fat. Takes up a lot of space. But if a person got attacked by a wolf in Arkansas and they woke up in a hospital in Washington, D.C., that's what happens in this movie. Okay. So let's just establish that it's kind of weird.
We drag you across several state lines.
He goes from the Scottish border essentially to London, but it is London's in the title. You got to get there eventually.
David Schofield, by the way.
There you go.
Plays the dart player in American Werewolf in London.
Oh, that dart play! I love that dart playing scene because I something about darts is so English.
Well, he's the guy who's outside the pub, also warning them about bad stuff's going to happen to you.
He's kind of the guy that caused him to get kicked out, though, because he said, "You made me miss my shot," and then he felt
both things. So that dude also is in Gladiator and Pirates of the Caribbean.
There you
go. Solid recognition there, man. I love that.
Boom.
Well, is it David Naughton is the lead actor here?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Well, he wakes up in an English hospital. And as he wakes up in this English hospital, this London hospital, As a physician, I'm serious. I'm watching this, and all I can think is, what a lucky guy, because wow, there's no deductible, there's no copay. He's got it made.
And then you find out that his doctor.
But here's what I'm saying. Before we even meet the doctor, I'm saying, wow, no deductible, no copay. And in England, the nurses check whether or not you're circumcised. Like they're having a conversation about his circumcision before the guy even gains consciousness.
You know, this is one of the things that I really like about this movie is that they are telling you, they are showing you throughout the movie that these are two Jewish kids. Like they keep doing it throughout the entire movie. Not once does somebody like point and scream Jews, but these are two Jewish kids.
Is John Landis Jewish?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, because this would be kind of weird if he wasn't, but I kind of thought maybe he wasn't.
It would be a little strange.
Because I mean, like Spieley, we know Spielberg is Jewish because of his name, right?
Yeah.
Did you just call him Spieley?
Good old Spieley.
Yeah,
Spieley.
Because I listened to a podcast that calls him Spieley.
Spieley does his kickstand you ain't never seen before, boy.
No, for real though. There's a podcast I listen to that always refer to him as Spieley, and I'm sorry I stole their thing, but it's like it works. But anyway, I just didn't know with Landis.
Yeah,
like I'm pretty sure Brian De Palma's Catholic.
But I mean, you know, with Landis, they drop all these, they drop all the hints in the movie, right?
The movie does, but once again, I thought it would be kind of weird if I decided to make a movie that really dealt with how Jewish the characters were. But in the 80s, people like me did that.
Right. That's true. Like I was watching a thing about Family Matters, like talking about the first season and stuff being written by like an all-white Jewish writing room and everything.
Yeah.
Aunt Rachel comes in and says "Oy vey," and you're like, don't know that a black family in Chicago is going to be coming in saying "Oy vey."
Man, one time I made an "Oy vey" joke one time online. I'll never do it again. But I used to work, you know, the guy that was the closest thing I ever had to a mentor was this Jewish ophthalmologist. And I worked with him as his like junior associate for a while. And one of the patients asked me if I was Jewish. And I said, no, I'm not. And then I post online, like today, somebody asked me if I was Jewish and I'm not. And I have no idea why they asked it. Oy vey. Right. Like, I thought that was a good joke.
It's not horrible. I mean,
I did think it was offensive. How about that?
Listen, if somebody's offended by that, they got
a Jewish girl that I went to high school with came at me hard, and I had to leave.
Oh, it's high school.
This is something they're bringing to the table.
Yeah,
I mean,
got problems.
This is one of those things where it's like, look, you're bringing your own anger to this thing. Like this has nothing to do with me.
Well, back to the movie. We get another shot that every werewolf movie has stolen. Now, I want to be clear that I'm pretty sure this movie didn't invent the shot, but when people steal it, they're stealing it from this movie. It's like one of those things where like the blues singer you never heard of made a song and then Led Zeppelin makes the song and then we're all ripping off Led Zeppelin. But anyway, there's that whole, you know, there's just the whole thing where you've got that like low camera angle moving through the moors here, moving down the trail. I mean, that's such a werewolf movie standard that Wolfen takes to a whole new level, and we'll get to talk about that next week. If I remember correctly, I might be thinking of the wrong movie.
He's thinking of Evil Dead. That's the best part of it.
Wouldn't it be funny if we watch Wolfen next week and I realize I've never seen this movie before?
That would be.
What I saw was a movie called like Wolfie. Like that has happened to me in my life. But I do got to say, in the hospital, that the guy from the American Embassy looks like the biggest goober. Like, man, this guy from the American Embassy. I don't know what John Landis had against diplomats, but man, this guy is
picking up these cats on Sesame Street. I'll tell you.
Are you kidding? Are you joking right now, Bruce? You don't know who that is?
I do not know who that is.
That's Frank Oz, my man.
Oh man! Did you think like Yoda when he talks?
That Fozzie Bear doctor that you heard in there going
Yeah. Yes, that is Frank Oz.
Well, I like it that Scotland Yard comes to town, and they do this thing where we got like serious cop. They do the thing where you kind of got like Enos and Roscoe, except Enos is in charge and Roscoe's the deputy. You know, because on Dukes of Hazzard, like Enos was by the book and Roscoe was the lunatic. Well, here they've got the Scotland Yard inspector who seems to have his act together, and the guy that's knocking over pens and saying the wrong thing.
Uh-oh.
And I know it's supposed to be funny, but to me, it comes across as obnoxious. What do you guys think about the Scotland Yard guys?
Like it's like they're so. It's such a small part of the film that like it hardly
For a
even
minute, I thought it was
registers.
muted. I was like really worried.
No, there's a little internet lag thing, but we're good.
Yeah, I'm so indifferent towards these two, it doesn't matter.
Well, I want to talk about something you're definitely not indifferent about. If a naked guy eating a deer is your thing, you're in luck because this movie's got it.
Man, this is probably like S tier for you.
It's not S tier because there is no way in heck I would ever be willing to get naked on camera. So this is a non-starter for me.
Well, listen, everybody can be Pride.
But we do get to meet somebody that I think Sean would call a little stinker. Sean, do you know who I'm talking about when I say we get to meet a little stinker?
I don't.
So there's the Indian kid who only says no.
That is a little stinker. He is a little stinker.
Oh man, he is such a little stinker.
Oh, he is a little
out
stinker.
of place in this movie. But
you want to smack him, but he's so cute that you can't.
I love him so much. I loved him instantly. Yeah.
And then almost out of nowhere, David wakes up. David wakes up in his hospital bed, having been attacked by a werewolf, not knowing where he's at, not knowing what's going on. And before you know it, there's a nurse climbing in bed with him and feeding him with a fork. Now, I have spent some time in American hospitals. I need to spend some time in some British hospitals because I have never gotten rizzed up by a nurse when I was a patient.
Yeah, this is like at that point, the second, like some alarm should be going off in your head. As any dude who just sit there, if you were to wake up in a hospital and all of a sudden your nurse is laying in the bed there, spoon feeding you some stuff, you best, look around because something's going down.
I've got to say that this is maybe the worst thing that John Landis has ever done on a movie set because the expectations that I have now for a British hospital are so high. How dare he?
I want to go to Britain just to get hurt to go to a hospital to see what might happen.
I think John Landis really supported national health care, and he thought if he put the nurse in the bed, there's not much that congressmen pay attention to, but having extramarital sex with a young person, that gets their attention.
I'll vote for that.
That is true.
National health care gets you rizzed up by nurses. Now, we do have a nice flash of horror makeup in this dream scene.
Can we go back to the nurse for a second?
Please do.
Because she has had one hell of a career, that lady. Because it was killing me while watching it. I couldn't figure out where else I knew her from because I hadn't seen this movie in a million years. However, I have seen the movie Logan's Run, and she's in that. And she is also in The Avengers, the Joss Whedon Avengers.
No way.
Really?
Yeah, she really is.
Huh.
Yep, she's part of the world security in the Avengers.
How about that? I tell you, I like this. I can't believe. I'm surprised at so many of these little weird character actors and stuff that were in this that we're finding out here. That's cool.
I know, man. It's kind of it's kind of like, but this is one of those movies too, right? Where it's like, oh man, I had no idea that person whose name I don't know is in this. Oh, here's another person whose name I don't know is in this.
Now, it's interesting that you guys pointed out to me that Frank Oz appeared, and I didn't know that Frank Oz appeared. And we even mentioned Bert and Ernie earlier. Mm-hmm. But then we got...
Well, that's why he said it.
Yeah, but we get this Muppets. We get Miss Piggy and Kermit on a TV screen. And
that is not accidental.
Right. It's not accidental, but also in 1981, and I just don't know how well you guys... are familiar with the context of this, but in 1981, the Muppets was a very British show because you may or may not know this, but the Muppets got life courtesy of BBC, and then BBC exported it to ABC, I think. So it was a like nobody wanted to give Jim Henson a commercial show. I mean, he was doing well with the Children's Television Workshop, but he couldn't get a commercial show in the US. So he went to the BBC, where commercial shows are still public broadcasting. and it got successful enough that he was able to export it as a straight up, what the Muppets are today. So very British in 1981, in my opinion, unless I'm wrong. Like this could.
Well, no, you're right, because it's the same production company that produced Space 1999,
and
it's the
Pigs in
same
Space.
company. No, I'm not kidding.
No, I
Space
believe you.
1990
That's the one that had. Did it have Ernest Borgnine? Who was in Space 1999? It had an Ernest Borgnine type. I don't remember who it was.
You're close. It's man, I can't remember his name right now. Keep going. I'll find it.
Well, anyway, we get the Nazi mutants, and the Nazi mutants coming in during the Muppet Show. It's a very, very quick thing, but it sticks out in your mind as if it's much bigger than it is, or at least it sticks out in my mind
now
as if it's much bigger than it is. And the Nazi mutants are my least favorite part of this movie. They just don't make sense.
Well, it's a dream.
And also, this is another thing informing you that this is a Jewish kid.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you are a Jewish kid, these are the things that give you nightmares.
Sean, I applaud you, because you just made so much more light shine on this scene that never made sense to me. I always thought that there was more story to it that got cut out.
No, it's literally just. In Landis.
A horror movie needs to be 90 minutes long. Do we talk about this? I don't think we talked about this because I wanted to last week, and then we ended up talking about other stuff. But a good horror movie, particularly in this time era, needs to be 90 minutes long, because you need to show double features at the drive-in, and you want people leaving by midnight. You're starting about at 8, so you want 3 hours of movie, a little bit of time for people to get parked and settled, a little bit of time to get out, a little bit of time to get concessions. So you want these 90-minute movies. This movie's 137 minutes, which tells me it's a 2-hour movie you had to cut down. So I almost wonder if there was some lore about World War II and the Nazis, and the werewolves helped defeat the Nazis or something, or maybe they empowered the Nazis, or the Nazis brought the werewolf. But I feel like John Landis had more story that got cut, but this was kind of a cool effects scene and expensive scene, so they kept it in.
Yeah, from my understanding, he just wanted, like, it was a cool dream sequence, and like they had these these great designs and everything. So much so that the face of that creature is the face for Rick Baker's Metamorphosis book. The slipcover.
Oh, neat.
Has that face on there, that kind of alien looking.
One of the 4 faces that he made. That's awesome.
Pretty cool, man.
Very, very neat. And so, but yeah, all that stuff, again, that was more just like, hey, we're gonna. But Landis was also kind of. I'm not sure if he was known for doing this, but that kind of like little reversal sort of thing is like, you think you're doing this, and of course it's a trope in horror movies: dreaming, wake up, and then the double fake out and stuff like that. It's just quality.
Mm-hmm.
Well, for some reason, I feel like this Indian orderly. Now, did you guys notice the Indian orderly? Do you know who I'm talking about when I say the Indian orderly at the hospital?
No.
He's the guy that delivers the food. The nurse starts saying, before we see David in the hospital, the nurse walks past this guy in the hallway, and she says, "How's he doing?" He says, "I don't know how he's doing. I just deliver the food."
Yeah.
Now, he had like these long sideburns and a mustache and what looked kind of like a Jerry curl. And I started thinking, like, this Indian orderly may have been the influence for Samuel L. Jackson's look in Pulp Fiction, because Quentin Tarantino was known to watch a movie or two.
I don't know. If you look at Sam Jackson's hair in Goodfellas, you'll go, oh, I see why Quentin Tarantino did that.
Yeah, I can see that. Now, I personally think the gore effects here stand out more than the wolf effects, because we get the gore effects earlier. I really think Rick Baker was a bit more comfortable with zombie effects at this point, because zombie movies had been hot for a while. Werewolf movies had been on the back burner. I think Rick Baker was probably rolling into it. But
his big thing at that point,
showing up with this awesome zombie makeup.
Hold on a second. Adam, go ahead.
His thing actually, like, really, what up until this point, his big claim to fame, like, he had a bunch of stuff, of course, but like one thing that he was really known for and continued to be known for throughout his career is all of the ape stuff. He did
Yeah.
so much monkey stuff from everything from your Harry and the Hendersons all the way to the new Planet of the Apes and stuff, back to Schlock with Landis and everything. The guy's been doing monkeys and stuff forever. So like Werewolf and stuff, not too far of a stretch off for him.
And
I don't
Adam,
think.
where does he come from? Like, where does he get his start?
He's California. I think he's born in California, if memory serves off the top of my
Right,
head.
but I mean, like, is he doing all this stuff on his own, and he's just doing it independently, or is he in
He was doing-
somebody's shop?
I mean, it's Rick Baker's studio. He worked for indie horror, and studios wanted to get some of that sweet money. So what did he work on? I'm thinking he probably did like Savini was doing the Romero zombie stuff, so maybe he was doing the other guy.
Well, the thing is,
the guy that did the Living Dead, Return of the Living Dead stuff.
Well, that's also Savini's buddy as well. So the big thing is this is like Baker's been doing makeup and stuff literally since he was like 12. Or even younger than that. So like he's like got this giant reputation, like starting off as a kid. I forget the first big thing that he was doing and stuff. But like
I know he was born. I'm just looking at Wikipedia. I'm trying to see. He was born in 1950. So at 21, his first credit shows up on Wikipedia, 1971. He's 21 years old, and there's a movie called Octoman about someone who's a half man, half octopus that he basically co-created the character design with a person who named Doug Beswick, who's probably the guy who brought him into the industry. And then he goes straight to The Thing with Two Heads, which Rosie Greer.
Wow.
Once you do The Thing with Two Heads, you've got industry contacts, because that was it's 1972. It's not remembered, but in 1972, it made a splash. And then from there, he goes to do Schlock, and the rest is history.
Mm-hmm.
But his big learning role, from what I understand, is The Exorcist.
Oh,
and you're working with Dick
work
Smith
on The
there.
Exorcist, you learn a lot.
What'd you say, Adam?
That's when you're working with Dick Smith. And like, and Dick Smith is one of those guys who is just one of the pioneers of special effects horror makeup and stuff like that.
See.
That is your Savini connection that you were talking about there as well.
I see.
And everybody learned from Dick Smith, really. He's really the pioneer
Now,
for.
You guys may not remember this controversial role, but there was a movie that Robert Downey Jr. was in called Tropic Thunder.
Amazing.
I don't remember it.
Rick Baker gets the credit for painting his face black in the last socially acceptable blackface role on Earth.
It is such an unbelievably good job. It's so good.
Of painting his face black?
Yeah.
It looked black. I agree.
It's not Soul Man good, but it's good.
It's not Norbit effects, because he also did the effects on Norbit.
Did he really?
Yeah,
good.
he did.
Yes.
Yeah, he did. And you know what?
Man, I
sitting here
hope he
reading
made, I
this,
hope
and
he
it's,
made
like,
more
awesome.
money than Eddie Murphy in that movie, because he was doing way more hard work.
He made so much money on all of those things, but that's that, and he's that's why he's
Adam
that's why he
sent me
retired.
a picture of Octoman. It's awesome.
It is good.
That's why he retired at like 60 years old, because he's just like, I've done it. I'm good. Thank you.
And he's still doing uncredited work in 2006 when he works with Adam Sandler on Click.
Listen, Click had some good makeups in it.
Yeah.
It's not a good movie, but it had some good makeups.
How does Rick Baker not get credited for
some
doing
make 'em
makeup?
ups?
Yeah.
Because you don't want your name on a Sandler flag.
Yeah, I get that, man. I mean, come on.
He did let him put his name on Tron Legacy, though.
Yeah, well, that's a beautiful movie.
Yeah, at least that looks good.
That movie is gorgeous.
Oh, wow. You guys may have known this when you were talking about it, but I didn't. But bringing things back full circle, Rick Baker did the makeup and hair for a movie called Ed Wood.
Yeah. Big, yeah.
Nice.
Him and Burton, big buddies. So, I mean, there's good reason for it.
I just learned something I never knew before. He did makeup on Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Hey,
the guy's got a career.
Yeah, listen, a lot of these guys, like Mick Garris worked on Star Wars. He might be all right with his 8,000 Oscars.
How many people on Earth in the history of humanity were on set for both Star Wars and Norbit? I mean, think about that for a minute. He did Star Wars and Norbit. There is no other like he's got to be the only person who worked on Star Wars and Norbit, right?
Well, you know why he
And Octoman.
Well, you know why he worked on Norbit, right? It's because he worked with Eddie all those other times, making him in all those other films, including like your Nutty Professors and then your Coming to America. It's like he did all that stuff with Rick forever.
It's one of those things where, as a non-Hollywood person, you think he made some prosthetics and some suits that were durable goods that every time Eddie Murphy used them, he got a credit. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, you make a hat and that hat shows up in multiple movies. You get credit for making that hat for multiple movies. And
how many days
happened there?
Adam, how many days do you think that Rick Baker was on set of Norbit?
6.
I'm going to say 0.
He probably. It's
Please,
like K and
man, I don't got much, Sean.
It's like
my
K and
life
B,
is not as
know?
exciting as you think. Let me have this.
I'm sorry. I didn't realize that was part of the dream, is that he was there on set every day. I'm sorry.
Yes, not every day, but like at least once. You know, it's like, oh my goodness, Eddie's nose is falling off. Call Mr. Baker.
He's on set. Don't worry.
So Eddie
Stop
Murphy
the presses and give that man some spirit gum.
Eddie Murphy just turns around and goes, Rick, can you fix this? And Rick goes, absolutely, Eddie.
Well, man, I got to tell you, I had some more notes, but forget that, because I got to just move straight to something, because that the NHS is really something. I know we got some UK listeners, and I know that in the UK, it's easy to complain about the NHS, but you've never been in our system. All right. Because in our system, nurses almost never take you back to their apartment. Almost never.
Especially the hot ones.
No copay and no deductible. And you go to a nurse's apartment and take a shower with her. Now, if Blue Cross Blue Shield could do that, I wouldn't complain about my premiums, but they don't do that.
Not with the nurses I've seen. I ain't going home with none of them.
Hey, man.
Again,
I paid for a nurse shower. I get a nurse shower. I don't care what that nurse is like.
This might be the biggest atrocity that John Landis has committed on a movie set, because this is putting the expectations way too high on nurses across the world.
Now let's turn the tables and say you're a British nurse, Sean.
Okay.
So picture yourself as a very attractive 25-year-old nurse in Britain in 1980.
Done.
Do you think taking an injured drifter back to your flat's a good idea?
A foreign one, no less.
Yeah, one that also is not proving to be very talkative.
And you already mentioned this before, Sean, but I just want to bring it back up again. HIV hadn't hit yet. Right. And I realized that because she's in her 20s and she said she's had 7 lovers. And that was unheard of in the 80s. Now, in the 60s and 70s, 7 lovers was like, what are you, 12? But in 1980, 7 lovers was like, geez, Grandma, were you a slut back in the 30s?
Yeah.
I mean, in the 80s, I don't know that people born before or after can understand this. But in the 80s, we were like, if you do it twice and don't get AIDS, count your blessings. Like, is that a fair thing to say, Sean?
That is what it felt like when I was in high school. Yes.
Yes. So when she says she had, and I'm not talking about what people really did. I'm talking about what people said they did. Mm-hmm. And in the 80s, nobody said they'd had 7 lovers at age 25. So when she just comes right out with it, I'm like, oh yeah, this is before HIV had hit when they were.
It doesn't, for some reason, it doesn't matter how attractive the person is. When the word lovers comes out of your mouth, I'm bummed out.
Lover.
I think it's probably because of that Saturday Night Live sketch, but I couldn't really tell you.
But here's the thing, that
man,
feels like
that word just bums me out.
That the sketch comes from a real place, though, you know, because, like, I mean, never to that degree, of course, but we've all met somebody like that, you know, refers to themselves or just as that weird kind of creepy couple.
Yeah,
that thing exists.
If I was writing this, she would have said, only 7 cabbies have ever given me a ride to Pound Town, if you know what I mean, and I know you do, and then slap him on the ass and wink.
That had been written in 1994. Had to wait a little bit.
Van Morrison.
Oh.
One of my favorite English singers of all time is Van Morrison. And Van Morrison's Moon Dance, I got to say, it does make everything better. And This movie, there's a lot of ways to tell it's big budget, and when it comes to horror, big budget can so work against you. But the one of the nice things is they spend a lot of budget, I think, on music, because we get good, strong, recognizable, expensive music in this. So there's a weird part of me that's like, if he's paying a lot of money for music, then they got to work a little harder on the effects. So
I don't know that, like, I don't think that we were at that era then that we were really commanding high dollars for needle drops within movies.
It's still a lot of money, but not nearly like it is now.
Yeah.
You're right.
But
I will say,
in 1981, if Charles Band was making a movie, it would not have had Van Morrison.
But at the same time,
that's
definitely
my point
not.
of comparison.
Van Morrison was probably on a Universal record label.
also true.
So
This is probably
Universal
all
Music Group,
Universal
yes.
Music. Yes.
Yeah. But
I gotta say that, you know, like when I first saw this movie, I hadn't listened to classic rock every day for 30 years, the same 20 songs. And so the first time I saw this movie, I was not nearly as jaded as the Sean that watched the movie this week, where the needle drops are like, you got to be kidding me. like where I realized this is new to this format, and these songs hadn't been played for 50 years by baby boomers every single day, absolutely ruining all of these songs. I understand that. But as I'm watching this movie this week, I'm like, you got to be kidding me with this. Like, it takes me out because I hate the soundtrack so much.
One thing we have to remember is in 1981, having Van Morrison's Moon Dance in your movie would be like a 2023 movie having Justin Timberlake's Sexy Back. Like, it's old, but
no, I know.
old.
I know. I understand that. I'm saying that I can contextualize that this is a great soundtrack when you haven't heard these songs every day and, like, you know, Capri Sun commercials and trying to sell you Chevys and Fords, and then it's also on the radio when you're going through the construction zone. Like, it's literally everywhere all the time, always.
And this movie does have that there's a little something to it where you're afraid it can just go on the nose.
Mm-hmm.
So I kept waiting because I didn't remember all the music as well as maybe I could have. I kept waiting for that Werewolves of London song to start playing, and I was so glad it didn't, because that would have just been like, it would have been too perfect. You know what I mean?
Thought I remembered hearing it in this movie. So when it didn't show up, I was like, all right, 1 point.
I take away one Robin rating for every Warren Zevon song that plays.
I think that the medicine cabinet jump scare, because we get what I consider another classic iconic jump scare, is this medicine cabinet. He's looking in the medicine cabinet. He closes it, and the mirror is his dead zombie friend, and he jumps. Mm-hmm. And man, I remember, this is weird, but I saw this movie in a drive-in, but not like when I was supposed to be seeing it at a drive-in. So when I'll go into that story later, but anyway, when the jump scare happens, I snuck in the trunk of a car. When the jump scare happens, I'm not supposed to be there, but people realize I'm there when that medicine cabinet jump scare happens. So it's pretty iconic. The only movie jump scare that I would say surpasses this is Brian De Palma's Carrie jump scare at the end with the hand coming up out of the grave. That's probably the king
Pretty good
of horror movie jump scares, but I never quite have in my life understood how camera operators get such good mirror shots in a lot of movies that I watch. So when I see this mirror shot, I love it.
Because the mirrors are on a gimbal.
I don't understand that stuff. You know what I mean? Like that stuff I don't know yet.
Okay.
Movie magic is always the answer.
Like, I just don't know how they get these shots in movies without the camera showing up in the mirror the way that they get these great angles.
Yeah, today Darren Aronofsky just sees CGI's them out.
Well, that's probably what happens now, but that didn't happen in 1980.
Oh no.
When Jack shows up in that mirror and you see the decomposition happening to this character,
yeah,
it's one of those things where I was like, oh, good on you, movie. Like, you're telling a story just through special effects right now. You're telling a story. Like, that's how you know that they're really doing a good job. And I gotta say, it's yet another thing. It's yet another bit of storytelling where these are two Jewish kids because Jack keeps calling David a putz, or he calls him a putz. He calls him. There's another
a schlep or something. He uses like another word, schlep or schlock.
Schlemiel?
No, he doesn't use schlemiel because that's Laverne and Shirley.
That's all I'm thinking of. So sorry.
That's the Werewolf in Wisconsin. Laverne and Shirley were in.
Oh, right.
Yeah, can we have a meeting on that? I'd like to kind of go with Wisconsin Werewolf. It's cleaner.
How about this Wisconsin Werewolf Fighter?
I don't know if he needs
It'll
to. Why
never
is he
work.
fighting?
Oh, rats.
Too violent for the kids. Those movies are going to have way too much violence as it is. Let's be frank.
Now, sometimes when you're sitting in a room full of hammers, like your life is just like, man, I got hammers everywhere. My life is so full of hammers. All the problems you see start looking like nails because you got all these hammers.
Oh, I thought you were going to Alanis Morissette on that one.
Yeah. I got 10,000 hammers and all I need is a fork.
Here comes his
which
pocket.
isn't ironic. It's just unfortunate, but she doesn't understand vocabulary. Anyway, we get this conflict. This conflict is introduced pretty early on. You have to kill yourself so you don't kill other people. But then we also have like, this is my dead friend talking to me. It's clearly hallucination, but he gives almost a rational explanation that like anyone killed by a werewolf becomes undead until the werewolf dies, but he's also like this whole movie until the very end, I think is trying to play the game of, is he a werewolf or is he crazy?
Yeah.
And then the very end makes it clear.
I think the title betrays that.
The title, if he were just crazy, I would want my money back. I mean, of course the title betrays that, but I think that is one of those werewolf tropes now that in a lot of movies they do try to play with. Are you a werewolf or are you insane? There was an incredible EC comic where a guy, because one of the beautiful things about werewolf lore is when you become a werewolf, it's like having a seizure. A lot of people think it's based on people with seizure disorders with epilepsy. But when you become a werewolf, you have an episode that you have no memory of. So the deal is there was this awesome EC comics where everywhere this guy moved, people kept getting killed by a werewolf. He was convinced he was a werewolf. Finally, he jumped out of the window and killed himself, or he did something to kill himself so he wouldn't hurt other people. And then you realized his wife was a werewolf and she kept moving everywhere he moved and she was the killer, not him.
Ooh, sneaky.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, so werewolf movies and werewolf literature, it always plays with the fact that you don't really know. Werewolf lore, back to its very beginning, deals with mental illness, dissociation, multiple personality disorder, bipolar disorder. It deals with rage control issues. It deals with so many things where it's like, there's this good person that I am 29 days a month, and then when the moon is out, I become a lunatic. You guys understand that the word lunatic, Luna, means moon.
We've all been married before.
Yeah, so but I mean, it's human nature, and that all comes out here, and they paint it beautifully. And then it starts to get where the way to deal with it is you have to kill yourself, and the biggest cause of mortality in people with mental illness is suicide. And this whole movie is a guy dealing with suicidal ideation. It makes me,
but that isn't what this movie is. This movie is an allegory for boners. No, this movie is an allegory for boners.
I think, once again, I'm in a room full of hammers right now.
Right.
All right. I'm in a room full of hammers. This movie looks like a nail. But if you wanted to study this as a perspective of an artist coming to terms with his suicidal ideation, you could discuss this movie in that context.
Sure.
Now, I don't know if you're familiar with this concept or not, Sean, but I know that you are, Adam, because you used to do a podcast with Matt Smith, who constantly, I won't say constantly, but he made a very valid academic point that authorial intent has nothing to do with the meaning of their art.
Right.
Yeah.
So if John Landis meant this to be a boner movie, that doesn't mean it's not actually a movie about suicidal ideation and dealing with it.
Well, you're right. It could be both of those things, but I mean,
or it could be neither. You know what I mean?
This is totally a movie about boners, though.
Well, boners pop up because they're trying to make people
Hey,
laugh.
good whimpers.
Yeah, but I'm a person who will talk about suicidal ideas and then realize, oh crap, they're paying too much attention to me, and make a boner joke so they think I'm being silly when I actually am not. Okay,
Right.
and I see some of that here. But
Okay.
just like The Howling and Joe Dante, American Werewolf in London and Landis, well, they pay their respects to the original werewolf movie, you know, that old the werewolf, you know, the Wolfman, actually, not the werewolf. The werewolf, a great movie, but the Wolfman more iconic. But the paying homage to it is so much more overt here than it is in The Howling, and I appreciate that quite a bit. And they also both have these different attempts at merging genres, because monster movies from the Universal era were their own genre, and they had gotten lost and forgotten. And it's just like people who grew up in the 90s want to bring back Ren and Stimpy. You know, people that grew up in the 60s want to bring back those monster movies they saw on TV after school. So they're all
another creator, totally unproblematic.
Nothing wrong
the Ren
at
and
all.
Stimpy creator. John
one
Kay, no problems there.
Ren and Stimpy, two creators, one problematic, one not. Bob Camp, I actually got to spend some time with in Canada. He's a good guy. So I'm defending Bob Camp.
You're in the Bob Camp?
Yeah, Bob Camp actually is not the one who had problems.
Hey, what if can we go backwards for a second here, because we're talking about talking about creator intent, right? When it comes to their movies,
I like authorial intent, but yes,
it immediately made me think of think of the, like, what if Tarantino doesn't know he has a foot thing?
Well, I bet you he would deny having a foot thing.
Oh no, he talks about it. He's cool with it
all the time.
He's just like, listen, everybody knows my stuff. Okay.
I just like a wonderful moment where, like, he's watching, you know, some review on TV somewhere, and the person's like, and here's Tarantino again with his foot thing. He's like, foot thing?
I do what?
What now? Oh, so funny.
It's a good frame. What do you? Oh my God.
I'm a storyteller. What tells a story more than someone's? Oh my God, I do.
I think this says more about you than it does about me.
I do love how movies made by people like Joe Dante and people like John Landis here, they say, man, we have to take this movie we loved as a child and totally reinterpret it for a new audience, so all the other people our age who loved it as a child will still love it. Like they really are trying to move things forward. And I admire that as an artist, but also they could have just made what they wanted and the same people would have seen it. It just wouldn't have had the legacy it has now. But I do love that Dante and his production, you know, I don't know how much was Dante, how much was somebody else, but Dante's production is like slashers. We're going to redefine the monster movie so that a new generation will watch it and they make it a slasher. Landis's idea is we're going to make it a comedy. Personally, when I talk about The Howling and American Werewolf in London is clearly the movie you can learn more from. But I think The Howling was probably more successful in making a movie that I have fun watching.
That you specifically have fun watching?
That me specifically have fun watching. Part of that is probably because I can't help but study American Werewolf in London. And The Howling, I am just escaping the world, and, you know, I'm watching Slim Pickens be goofy. I'm watching Dick Miller. I'm just turning my brain off when I watch The Howling.
This is literally our taste preference, Bruce, because the Howling is a good movie. I like The Howling, but it's also so slow, and it's very, like, I'm on my phone like throughout 60% of that movie. Whereas with this movie, it was such a quick watch for me, and not that, like, it's not slow in parts, because it is. But the slow parts are so much smaller than the slow parts in The Howling. And I think the comedy probably has something to do with that. Just the fact that, like, there's so many times where, like, because it's just the way I watch movies anyway at this point, where like at times I'm not watching the movie for the story. I'm watching it for like, oh, that's a good choice.
I
Like
think
you
the
that kind of
American,
thing.
I think the American Werewolf in London could have been the werewolf movie equivalent of what Halloween was for slashers
Uh-huh.
if Landis had just made an incredible, beautiful horror movie and had backed off on the comedy. I think that what I find amazing about this movie is that despite it being called a comedy, that it's way better at horror than most horror movies, and its comedy is dated to me. It's a style of
Sure.
comedy that doesn't translate so well to modern time, and also, I'm more prone to a broad comedy like Dick Miller makes me feel more comedic joy in The Howling than any comedy does here. But you're right, this is paced better because Dick Miller, unfortunately, is not in every frame of The Howling, which would have made
That
it the
is
greatest
that
movie
is
of all time.
unfortunate. That
It
is
would have made it the
unfortunate.
greatest werewolf movie starring Dick Miller of all
Dick
time.
Miller's The Howling.
If he played both the werewolf and the damsel in distress, I would buy 2 tickets and sit in 2 seats and watch it twice.
Man.
Which is exactly how it works when you watch a movie twice. I don't know why I said that like it was something special. All right. I mean, is there any other way to watch a movie twice than buying 2 tickets, sitting in 2 seats, and
You
watching
could
it twice?
skip. You could skip a theater and just go on to the next one and break the law like a lawbreaker.
Yeah, what's
They
the best way to steal a bunch of movies from a movie theater, Adam? Please continue.
Just sit up front. Ain't nobody messing with you up front. Just roll up there.
Just go into the projection booth, grab the reels, and run.
That is not how it works anymore.
Oh, shoot. Grab the solid state drive and run.
Good luck.
Okay, there's something that happens here that I feel like for 1981 is a stroke of genius for someone who grew up in America. And we go back to the pub. We go back to the slaughtered lamb. And when the London doctor comes in, he is just as out of place as the Americans. And I think that most American directors would not understand that England functions like our own country. You know what I mean? That a person from New York City is just as out of place in rural Arkansas as someone from London would be.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And they communicate that really, really well, because this London guy goes to the slaughtered lamb. And I would say that the doctor probably gets along with him even worse, because he walks in and orders a Campari and soda, which, I guess it's a comedy, but it's like the 1980s thing where Julia Louis-Dreyfus goes in that Christmas vacation movie, and like she expects Applebee's to have some weird kind of Manhattan martini or something. It's like that old joke. But it's something that seems natural when an American director is setting a scene in rural America. But I just admire that he was able to have the perspective to do that in 1981 in this movie.
Yeah.
And I also really kind of wish I could be a handsome older man like this London doctor. He's a good looking guy, you got to admit. Meanwhile, I look like a broken, busted down Jack Black, which is really saying something, because Jack Black ain't exactly the peak of physical fitness.
He's not top notch of the physical.
Yeah. Somebody told me I look like an older Jack Black, and I'm 4 years younger than him, you SOB.
He got Jack Black money.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. I got John Gray money.
But when we get to just all of the changes and stuff from obviously the big turnaround change and everything, just like that's what shows me that this movie's like so much better than The Howling, where The Howling is all done The Howling. They all sound the same, these damn movies. But we got The Howling, The Haunting, the everything's the same. But this Howling is done in darkness. This is done in the stark light of an apartment.
That is insane. That
so much of this is in broad daylight.
This is so early to special effects, and to have this happen in what is this, 81?
81.
It's
81's
insane.
When it was released.
It's insane that this is happening in 1981.
just the mechanics that they built for everything. And Rick Baker's book Metamorphosis has got his like sketches and initial drawings and stuff, and the painting of the werewolf that Rick Baker initially did, because he ain't just doing all the creatures, he's an arty boy too. He designs all of this stuff and paints it and everything like that, and then does all the physical crap too, which is amazing. But just seeing like how many people were on set just pulling little wires and just off frame, because that apartment seems like so real in such a big, place that's empty, and he's the only person in it. But like, there's so many people that are doing 8 gajillion things while this transformation is going on and stuff. And there's a reason why, like, I want to say the year before this was when they initially, I'm trying to remember what movie it was, where they were like, bro, we gotta give out like, the proper makeup Oscar. And that's where the best makeup for award came in, and that's where this is the first one to win it, and there's a good reason why.
Oh, really? This is the first one to win an effects award.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
an
Oscar?
Oscar.
Did it win a makeup award or an effects award?
Makeup awards, because it was like for best makeup effects.
You know the story about best makeup, Sean?
No.
David Lynch makes the
That's
Elephant
what Elephant Man. I couldn't remember what the film was.
No, there was no Oscar for makeup.
That's my point. Is that after that,
the Academy's like, oh my God, we need to give this guy an award, and it doesn't exist. So we're going to create an award, and then Rick Baker gets it.
Yep.
Wow.
Because, they're equally artistic films.
Listen, I enjoy the Elephant Man. The makeup job in the Elephant Man is spectacular. There's no doubt about that. This movie stomps
when
on
I say
that one
they're
by a million
equal
ways.
movies, my joke is this movie doesn't stack up to the Elephant Man. That's my joke. I'm sorry if
I
was
know
misunderstood.
I know what you meant, and you're wrong.
The Elephant Man's incredible.
I love that movie. This, as far as from a makeup perspective, this stomps the crap out of the Elephant Man. Sorry, but it does.
The scariest movie I ever saw in my childhood was The Elephant Man. The only movie that ever kept me from being able to sleep at night was The Elephant Man.
But because of Tony Hopkins, that's the real reason. He don't tell you that.
Yeah. I am not an animal. But we do get, I'm going to go ahead and move us to the wrap up, because, man, I could talk for 7 hours about this movie, and it wouldn't all be good, and it wouldn't all be interesting. But we get Rick Baker's transformation. And this is the werewolf transformation, that, to borrow a phrase that Sean introduced me to, of course, the context is Chris Rock. But this werewolf transformation, Sean, killed the bit, right? I mean, after this, if you're going to do a werewolf transformation, you had 2 choices. Do your best to copy this or do it off screen. And there was no in between. It literally killed the bit. This is the werewolf transformation.
And it almost even really killed it for Rick Baker in and of itself, too. Because if you look through Baker's history, one of the last films that he ended up doing was, I think it was The Wolfman with Benicio del Toro, where they were
wow, really?
He did do that, yes.
The thought process is we're going to kind of combine the two, the old school and the new school, with some CGI with along with practical effects and everything. And like the thought process from everybody was like, oh, this sounds like a recipe for success. You got one of the best makeup guys ever, and then you can, if you smartly introduce some digital stuff in there, we might have a werewolf transformation for the ages. This might be the 21st century, but no, it wasn't. It was kind of a crappy one, and that whole movie stunk to high heaven, so we don't speak of it much.
I was going to say, having Rick Baker work with CGI is like having Frank Sinatra work with auto-tune. Like, what's the point?
Well, was the thought process was, it's like, oh, it'll just like accentuate, the physical stuff, and if done correctly, you can do that. But
yeah, I mean, Star Wars does that all the time at this point.
They didn't hear though, so.
But you guys can clearly see where Baker and Bottin were on the phone with each other, mapping out these werewolf transformations. I mean, it was basically one blueprint that the 2 men executed, and you see all those similarities, but it also becomes clear that Rick Baker's the one who really understood what we're going for.
Well, when you said that to me last week, I was like, nope, didn't happen. But now watching this movie again, I'm like, oh yeah. And, because Baker has far more money and far more experience, this does look better than what happens in Howling. But and there's certain things they can't do, like seeing the hand extend and all that stuff.
And as much as I love, Baker and his work and stuff, Rick Baker ain't do nothing like The Thing. Rob Bottin did though.
There are
Oh,
three. There are three directly mimic shots in this transformation that I picked up. One is the scene. I mean, one is just the scenes with the air bladders.
Yeah, the blubbly face.
Rick
Blubbly.
Baker, basically one of those things where like you're laying down, there ain't a worry in the world, you ain't got nothing to do, you're getting ready to go to sleep, and suddenly you're wide awake thinking about how air bladders would work. Like Rick Baker said, why has nobody ever used air bladders? So he talks to Bottin, and that's why they look so similar, is these are the first two examples of air bladders in a werewolf transformation. But Rick Baker, I believe, is the one who came up with that idea. I don't have any evidence or nothing, but I'm not trying to do leopards don't live in India here, people, please. But my impression is that he's who came up with the air bladder, and it's the air bladders that make them look so much alike. And we do get an urban fervor as this killing spree unfolds, leading to a jarring trip to the zoo. What do you guys think about this first inner city? This might be the first urban werewolf killing spree caught on film. Werewolf films have all.
I like the idea that we caught it on film as if it were happening on the streets of London and we just picked it up.
You know?
Internet lag.
And I mean, that is part of the appeal. You see American Werewolf in London and wow, this is the first urban werewolf movie.
I gotta say, man, you really, for me, I totally see that this is a Landis movie. Once the 20 million cars start smashing into each other, I'm like, yep, this is a Landis movie, all right.
Talking about those cars smashing into each other, all my life, I thought that this big final climax took place in Trafalgar Square. I've been to Trafalgar Square. I've walked around Trafalgar Square. You know what Trafalgar Square has? Lots of pigeons. So there's pigeons in this scene, and I assume that all of England's pigeons live in Trafalgar Square. But it's Piccadilly Circus. You know what my first clue should be? The road is round. Very rarely are big areas with road circles called squares. I'll just say that right off the bat.
True. It's true.
But
Good point.
circus kind of means round. So that makes way more sense, but it's Piccadilly.
Yeah, Landis, in the interview I watched, he said that he thinks the most successful werewolf shot in the entire movie takes place in the tube station when dude is going up the escalator.
Rich necktie dude, yeah.
And he turns around and he sees in the the werewolf kind of like comes out.
Here's what I don't like.
The reveal there, yeah.
I don't like that scene because it crossfades too quickly to the lion so that you doubt your own eyes, which is brilliant filmmaking, but not satisfying for me as that being the werewolf scene, because the later creepy werewolf scenes are what catch my attention.
Well, we'll let Landis know that.
Okay, I'll write him a letter. I'll say, coming from a person who's never killed anyone with a helicopter, I just want to say this.
Dear Landis, stop.
Clearly the second worst thing he's ever done on a movie set before.
Sean, you yourself said this movie's about boners.
Yes, it is.
So when David Naughton wakes up naked in a pen with two timber wolves, do you think he did the stuff with those wolves when he was a werewolf?
Yes, of course.
That's exactly what I'm supposed to think. See, I've got a brain that I can't trust. So sometimes I think like I'm supposed to think this. Like I've already talked about how this movie's about suicide and you say, no, it's about boners. So when I see this and I think he did the stuff with those wolves, I don't know if you're going to say, of course he did, or only you would think that, Bruce. Like that is where I live in the world.
Suicide Boners is a great punk band name.
Oh man, that really is a good name for a punk band. Suicide Boners.
But when a naked American man stole my balloons is uttered by an English child.
Yes, it's fantastic.
That's amazing.
A Nike man stole my balloon.
A naked
American man.
All I can think is that kid saying, a naked American man stole my balloons. And that's exactly what Marty Merrick would say if I could ever get a bus ticket to Leicestershire. You'd be like, this naked man came out of nowhere and stole my balloons. Oh, man. But that iconic climax, all the cars crashing, I do like the part before he gets his final werewolf transformation and he's going to try to kill himself, and he goes to the red telephone booth and he picks up the phone, and eventually it makes more sense. But at first he picks up the phone. He tells the operator, I'd like to call the USA Correct. collect from David for anyone.
Yeah.
And I'm like, can you just say, give me anyone in this country? And the operator will do it.
All right.
But then later he gives her a specific phone number. And I realize he means no matter who answers the phone, I want to talk to them. But at first I'm like, is he just saying, give me anyone in America? And I'll tell them to tell my mom I love them.
Klondike 654.
But we do get another adult movie theater scene. And Rick Baker and Bottin, you know, their transformation scenes being so similar are going to make people compare this. The fact that we have 2 werewolf resurgence movies coming out in the same 12-month period is going to get people to compare them. But then they both have adult movie theater scenes, which I think is a comment on how mainstream porn was in the late 70s.
Well, yeah, because I mean, when you have like stuff like, you know, Behind the Green Door and all this stuff that comes out and then becomes like a pop culture phenomenon, even amongst, you know, Hollywood people and everything. I mean, there's video of them going to see these flicks and stuff like that. And so like it's the word has gotten out.
And in its simplest form, werewolves are a metaphor for human changes in its simplest form.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, puberty is a big human change. Werewolves are associated with puberty because people get hairy, they start to act differently, they get angry, they get bumpy, and they get horny. So werewolves are always associated with libidinous activity. So I think putting the adult movie theater scenes in both of these contemporaneous films makes sense at the time, but when you watch it now, it really, really feels like one is trying to mimic the other, right?
I mean, you know, you got that. I mean, there's porno theater, Taxi Driver, and like it seems to be just kind of a.
It feels like there were porno movies in like porno theaters and like every dirty, like if you're in New York,
yeah, it's like you're in a scuzz place, yeah.
In the 70s, yes, but I think that's because there was the phenomenon of out of nowhere movies like Deep Throat and Behind the Green Door and The Devil and Mrs. Jones were showing at what counted as the local movie house back then.
Right.
I mean, they didn't have AMC and Regal, but you did have the mom and pops, and they're devoting the big screen to Deep Throat for a week.
Right.
But man, could you imagine? Anyway, I won't even go into that.
Yes,
but
I
anyway,
can because I saw a documentary and there were old people in the theater. So yeah, I can actually. It was weird.
Not being able to control your sexual urges is a werewolf theme. So it shows up here with all these adult movie theater scenes that show up in both of these films. And also I hate the adult movie theater scene because this is the reason I couldn't watch werewolf movies until I was able to go to Blockbuster on my own.
Blockbuster edited those scenes out.
Man, but we get a more quadrupedal wolf this week. I wonder if at some point the people who make important decisions decided they did need to differentiate this movie because the quadrupedal wolf is bold. It's used rarely. It's not as beloved, but boy, does Landis find a way to make it look unsettling in this movie, because I did not think a quadrupedal werewolf could affect me the way this one does in terms of the visuals. There will never be a quadrupedal werewolf like this. I'm sorry, Twilight. You missed the mark. Underworld, you missed the mark. John Landis, I don't like you, but you're the only guy that has ever made a quadrupedal werewolf that impressed me.
The thing is like with this is because I think one of the reasons that you like it is because of the imperfection of it all, because it's a full puppet that's being controlled by a whole bunch of people and everything. Its movements are off. They're not quite real, which lends to
they're also way better than they should be. Like,
right.
Yes, they're off, but they're fluid enough to be Uncanny Valley and not Muppet. Like if it was stop motion, it would not be unsettling to me because my brain loves Harryhausen, right?
And it's got this big, fat, thick body like a Rottweiler.
That's what's unsettling is it looks like at any moment it could stand up if it wanted to, but it's choosing not to. That's part of the unsettling.
It's a muscular run too. It's a muscular run where it's like that's what's frightening about it. Yeah.
It is not a body shape or a type of movement that occurs in nature, and to me that creeps me out.
But yeah, it's a good stuff, and we finally, and once we get them killed there and everything turned back to normal, like it's a great ending.
And the last thing I got to say is this has the classic Wolfman ending, only instead of Claude Rains, it's the cops. But it also kind of has the classic King Kong ending. And I'm not talking about any of the remakes. I'm talking about like the 1930s original classic movie, King Kong, where the final line, I believe, of the film is it wasn't the planes, it was beauty that killed the beast.
Mm-hmm.
And in this movie, in the end, all I could think is it wasn't the bullets, it was beauty that killed the beast, because it was the nurse that got his attention so that he was able to be shot by the cops. And it really had that King Kong ending, which I guess pushes back to the fact that maybe a director like John Landis thinks the secret to immortal life is never to do it.
Are
Like,
we are we thinking of two different King Kongs? Because the King Kong, the last line of the King Kong that I remember best is like, so we're just going to leave him in there in the middle of the earth? And they said, yeah, I guess so. We're just going to leave him right in the middle of the earth.
I'm talking about the hacky one that nobody likes.
The hacky one. Oh my word. Oh my word. Hacky. You shut your mouth right now.
No. Honestly, best monster movie. I'm sorry, all of you Japanese fans of Godzilla. Godzilla is a great movie, but it is it's a literary feat. Filmmaking. Come on, you're
talking about Godzilla in 1996, right?
And I'm talking about the one with Matthew Broderick. I thought that was 99.
Maybe that is 99.
No, I don't know my dates.
Yeah, you know what they say: if you remember the 90s, you weren't there.
Oh. Well, you know what I want to be able to remember is how in the world this movie could relate back to 1-to-1 with Sylvester Stallone.
Why, thank you, Adam. I have a prepared statement.
Ooh.
Hello, Mr. Stallone. This week's Stallone connection is Frank Oz, who shows up in this movie out of nowhere, says his two lines, and smoke bombs himself out of there, never to be seen again. You very famously guest starred on The Muppet Show, where Miss Piggy threw herself at you, and you, being a gentleman, declined her incessant offers. And there's your Stallone connection.
I love it.
But another reason why I bring up Frank Oz this week is because I wanted to speak about Frank Oz's first job in broadcast television, because most people know about Yoda, Miss Piggy, Fozzie, and Bert, but I don't think a lot of people know that Frank Oz and Jim Henson worked on the Jimmy Dean Show.
Oh, yeah.
Their first job, that
was
Jimmy
a real
Dean
sausage
Show.
fest.
The guy I know best as the Sausage Guy was a country western singer, his big hit being Big Bad John, a hit so big in 1961 that it made Jimmy Dean instantly famous. Wasting no time.
Sorry, man, I shouldn't interrupt, but Big Bad John, one of the first 45s I ever owned.
Wasting no time, Jimmy Dean took his fame and parlayed that into a comedy variety hour 2 years later. And on the show was Jimmy Dean's sidekick. That sidekick was a piano-playing dog named Rolf, voiced by Jim Henson, but puppeteered by Frank Oz. Rolf became an overnight sensation, and the show would get over 2,000 fan letters a week saying how much they loved Rolf. The show would air for 3 years, after which we know what would happen with Frank Oz and Jim Henson. Jimmy Dean would start a pork sausage company that would bring him untold fortune. But Buddy Atkinson was a writer on the show, which is a name you might not recognize, but he would also become a millionaire by creating, writing, and producing a show called The Beverly Hillbillies.
Oh.
That's your Stallone connection this week. Frank Oz, I hope to hear from you soon. Your pal, Sweet Shawnsy from the internet.
You see, this is why I like the Stallone connection, because you never quite know where it's going to go. I thought we were going to go Oscar route.
Hey, it's so easy because it's literally right there.
You cannot prove that Frank Stallone is not named after Frank Oz.
It's true. I can't prove that.
Can't not prove it. That's for darn sure.
You can't prove it because I'll put my fingers in my ears and go la 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 if you tried to.
Then it won't be any different. Well, here at HMP, we got our own patented Robin rating system. Bruce, this is curious because you have kind of gone a little wavering here, so I want to know what your Robin rating is for American Werewolf in London.
It's a great movie. You know, it's a great movie, and just because I like other movies better doesn't mean that I don't like this one. And sometimes it's hard to get across because sometimes you have to argue really well when you have an outsider feeling. But is somebody who knows nothing about nothing, if I was forced to give some kind of advice to a young person who wanted to have fun making a werewolf movie, I would say you have to watch this movie because it's going to tell you how you can do it. And then you say, well, I don't want to do this and I don't want to do that. And if you don't say you don't want to do it, all the rest you have to do. That's how important this movie is. You don't pick the parts you want to use. You pick the parts you want to change, and then you're using everything else. Because it has defined the werewolf movie better than anything since Universal's Wolfman.
Yeah.
And that means it is up there that everybody needs to watch it. But for me, I don't enjoy it as much as a lot of people do, but I still think everybody needs to watch it. So I'm going to give it, I'm famous for inventing the Robin rating scale.
Oh, of course.
And I'm also here. I've got recorded.
It was
evidence.
all you.
Hello, it's 2016, and I'm inventing the Robin rating scale. You see that?
Wow.
See,
Adam, do you know who invented it?
I mean, I don't know. Like, it's one of those
love it
things.
if it
Again,
was like-
it was
if
so
it-
long
Because I know
ago.
who it is. I know who it is.
I
I'm
think
gonna.
it'd be-
I think I'm gonna clip that segment and we'll
Okay.
we'll play it.
You're sounding as if maybe you created that segment, Sean.
I'm not saying that.
He
Okay.
might
I
have.
just know I know who did it. So
Well, I'm thinking it might have been you, because how else would you know so well?
we'll see.
And I'm not arguing with you. I'm just
We'll
saying
see
that I
next
will
week.
Have you
We'll see next week.
Tune in.
have you ever heard a little term called revisionist history? Anyway, Carrie Kelly, go watch it. If you love it, you're welcome. If you don't love it, watch it again and figure out why, because that's what I had to do. And I respect this movie more than I like it.
You know what's funny is he says that he doesn't like he came up with the Robin, yet he absolutely used it to its proper degree right there, because he like, for him, this is a Carrie Kelly, it's like he understands its place in history, but he's not necessarily willing to say that it's one of his particular favorites, but he knows why people would like it. That's what a Carrie Kelly is. Congratulations, Bruce. You did write the best system in the world.
That's exactly what I had in mind when I invented the system.
Of course it was.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
Sean, what about you in the system that Bruce
I
clearly
really hope
invented?
I really hope Adam invented it, because he is totally convinced he didn't at this point. That's why I hope it's him.
For me, this is my second favorite werewolf movie. This is a low Tim Drake. It is great. Great is the wrong word. It is very good. It is a very good movie, and it's slow in parts because, again, it's from 1981.
Yeah.
I would imagine that my kids would watch this movie and think it's the oldest movie ever made.
When stuff ain't gonna happen.
But this is a cool movie, and so it is a low Tim Drake for me.
We're going all the way.
Tim Drake. I thought you were going to rank it higher, Sean. I'm sorry to throw in that editorialization at the end, but I kind of felt like this maybe resonated with you a little higher than it did.
It's my second favorite werewolf movie. It's like, it's a good movie. It's just,
Cool.
It's
If you don't mind to privately, like, not share it with the public, but privately text me your favorite werewolf movie so I can work with that, if you don't mind.
sure. You already know it, though.
Have you ever heard of a
think-
movie called The
is it-
Howling 2?
That's right. Your stepsister, or your sister's a wolf. Something like that.
Well, I hope it's Teen Wolf, because that's what's on my schedule for the final week of this.
I just texted you.
I know, that's why I said it out loud, but that is literally what I was planning ahead of time. I mentioned that last week, but thank goodness it's on my list, because I feel really bad if your favorite movie didn't make my list.
Yeah, some obscure thing like Dog Soldiers or something like that.
Man, if it was Dog Soldiers, I might just have to take back what I said about sticking on the show for a while.
Fun times. We're going Dick Grayson, boys. There's a reason I bought this on 4K and didn't have to
Good job, buddy.
didn't have to watch this again because I'm so glad that this was this week because I was super pressed for time and I did like within the last 2 weeks watch this movie, so it was very, very fresh in the brain. So I didn't have to do that. So I thank you for that, Bruce. But this again, while watching that, and again because it was the 4K, and I'm like, oh, I really want to just suck it all in here. It's great. It holds up so darn well, and you know, there's a reason it won all the awards and is what it is. I don't need to sell anybody on this film. It does it itself. So go see it.
It's no cat people, but it's good.
Not quite. But we'll see. You know, maybe we'll have a cat month at some point. That's not going to happen. Never going to happen. That is it, everybody. Bruce, we talked about it. Now what are we're doing the Howling next? Or wait, no, I'm sorry. Wolfen again. Wolf's Howls.
We're doing Wolfen. We're doing Wolfen next week because I have some kind of mental disease that means I have to write this month out as if it were a syllabus for a class at a college. So everything is being ordered in a specific way to learn about the art of the renaissance of werewolf movies in the 80s. So Wolfen has to be there. And we're going to see that with at least 3 of the 4 movies I've already picked, comedy is crucial. Like even in The Howling, Dick Miller's performance, I think you can't call anything but comedy, and I also think it's the brightest part. So comedy goes through Teen Wolf, of course, as well. So we're going to see what is it like when you try to make an honest werewolf movie with no comedy. Boy, it's going to be fun, ain't it?
I bet there's going to be a laugh a minute riot, but maybe for the wrong reasons. We'll find out next week, everybody, when we're talking Wolfen. Sean, where can we find more of our work on the internet?
You know what? We have got another podcast called Star Wars 30 Questions, Ahsoka 30 Questions. Show up for that.
We are rounding out that season there and everything. We got a lot of stuff to say on that, so check it out. That is it, everybody. Join us next week when we're talking Wolfen. First week, shout to go back from the internet. And Bruce Leslie, I'm Adam Porters. Stay super, everybody.
Bye, Marty and Eden.